Hello, and welcome to episode 16 of Afrikanists Assemble, where we're discussing the power of radio to bring African cultures to people outside the continent. Here's the question we asked our contributors this month. Let's pretend that a radio station in Germany that wants to feature exclusively African content approaches you and asks you to create a weekly program. You have the rights to air anything you want for 2 hours every week. What kind of program do you make? Let's hear their answers.
African language radio series. Learn Arabic on air, learn Yoruba on air, learn Swahili on radio. Since promoting the concept of multiculturalism and racial diversity is a laudable idea, the policy of this African language radio series can be said to reflect this impressive objective, as can be deduced from the nature of programs and ideas that emanate from the program concept. On the short term, this concept should be read as part of a collective effort in the promotion of African languages globally. There is no doubt that a series such as this will add visibility and accessibility to African languages. There are formal and informal educational gains derivable from this kind of radio production, as it can be used as part of class materials or as real-life complements of classroom instructions. So what will the synopsis of a program like this be? Since communicative approach is a favored global method of second language acquisition, the radio program will rely on a great extent on recording of real-life situations that can facilitate learner understanding in an American or European setting. Each language area will therefore select about 10 different situations which can be performed and illustrated within the allotted time. For instance, situations such as the following: various greeting scenarios, self/family description, transportation-related conversations, ordering meals at restaurants, bank transactions, cooking a meal, conversation involved in renting an apartment, buying from a store, numeral systems, preparing for an outing. This would be my general outlay of a program on radio, and it would work in Germany, it will work in any part of the world. It just means that the various languages collaborate to present a template that can be used for each of them. So this is, in general, my idea of an African language radio series. It will not cost much, but would only cost the determination and the interest of those who are interested.
Emi radio Germany gan mi lo etun eti pajuko zuni satina yi eganji labariji to ezabaji eti dandan to aseli lupetijo etun nana na yi sunu Afrikana na alatula epo guniyan eganji labariji to ezabaji yan alada lupetiji dangwata egan yiri jiyan misun etunji dandan nupechi ekanye yiri dandan nupechi to ezo yiri ji yan mo fari na yi egan yiri jiyan misun na de ajinbe egangan to eye pe egangan ji na kotonkochi yi labariji enikoji ganchiji to echinji na yan bachi na yi etunji dandan nupechi na de ajinbe etungwa to yan yeme na ike ebatu engichijin edelu kasalu ko zongulu na ekanye yiri dandan nupechi na itachi to na yi eti kuku ye kan yan ezaji ke shani yawojin sunajin ezatu egbelati to ekanye ndochiji na kanga eniko enyanyan ezo sanchi to ezo zoji yi edzo yiri ji ya sati ndondo etun awaguba yan emi radio Germany nana ayi lela kadoshi yan eyan epo guni Nupe na mitun ele anina ama etun yan sati mo fare ade lilabe yan etan ko gbere yan Nupe chiji ebo tupa shi chiji radio nana ade dede gboro pajikoji na gangan na ebo gabo etun radio nana Afrikana ya etun yan efoni nini misatio ayi anigaga etan pin yan Nupe chiji mitigbon o kinegi fiagi eniko dandan degi mitigu ganchiji ni minupio miti eshi kinegi fiagi titangiji ni minupio mitigu echiji ni minupio miti eshi engichiji yan Nupe miti eshi to ezaba be tupa shi chiji be amfani waye mitigu.
Thank you for this challenge. That's really a nice one. I would feature the riches and diversity of contemporary African popular cultures. And 52 weeks in a year sounds almost like one could focus on a country each week. So I would center this 2-hour slot on a radio feature or interview with an eminent personality, which can be listened to in the original language or in the auto translation. And that could be about a startup or someone from the arts sector, an arts project, a business, or someone from the social sector, anything that's interesting, contemporary, vibey, and upbeat. Something like a little bit like CNN's Africa Today, just with less of the capitalistic touch to it. Anyway, so something like that. And then this can be garnered by lots of pop music in between. And at the end, I would end off with sort of a radio play or a soapy with a nice juicy cliffhanger that makes you long for more and switch on next week again to hear how the story goes on. Yes, and the objective would be to reach a broad public and to convey a taste of contemporary African life beyond wars, poverty, and corruption, and just get people closer to your home, so to say. And next week, we could start with Eswatini. Why not?
If I am to prepare a program for radio and television broadcast, I would consider the area of African storytelling in its practical sense. This is because African storytelling has informative, educative, entertainment, and social bond and discourse content to explicate. Engaging African storytelling shall avail the opportunity to exploit every area of storytelling as an important project that is capable of revitalizing the process of enjoying the art of storytelling to our children. And it will also provide a means of learning to retell and repackage African stories. Storytelling as a genre of orature is so unique that it is used to build discipline and morals in children and adults alike. Hence, taking it as a topic of discourse in radio and television program will advance its course in Africa and beyond. In designing such broadcast programs, consideration shall be given to A. Importance of storytelling. B. Types of storytelling in Africa. Then C. The art of storytelling. D. The participative manner of the audience. E. Distance storytelling is also another aspect of African practical storytelling that has not been fully exploited. F. The recreating of mutilated stories in Africa.
If I were making a radio program that ran for 2 hours each week, I think I'd make a program called Literary Arts in Africa. It would feature a literary creator each week, whether in written literature or oral literature, or maybe someone working in both, and the 2 hours would run separately. 1 hour, the first, would feature a conversation with the literary creator about their life and work. The second hour would consist of a journey led or guided by the literary creator, whether directly or indirectly, depending on how involved they were willing to be. Hopefully, they'd be very involved. And this journey for the audience would entail learning about spaces, practices, or other artistic creators that matter to the featured author, that they find helpful or meaningful in their own art. This second hour might include a little workshop led by the literary creator with some exercises for listeners that give them a new entree into the art of this particular literary creator. And/or it might consist of a sort of personal travelogue, a visit to a place important to the author. And/or it might consist of a reading, the author reading their own work, or maybe reading some other work that they love. What would be important in this second hour is that there would be an experiential and in many cases a practice component that would follow along after and in some creative sense belong with the initial conversation that would spiral out from that. As for language, the show would in each episode be guided by the language knowledge and language preferences of the featured literary artist. And a feature of the show would be a wealth of language options for listeners, transcripts available in and interpreters working in an array of African and other languages. And because this second hour in particular would be asking for something from the literary creator, really asking them in some capacity to be a guide or a teacher to the radio audience, it would be important to persuade them to participate by paying them well, I think. And hopefully in this way the show would elucidate over time, in a sort of clear and specific way, a sense for its audience not only of who particular literary creators are in Africa at the moment, but also of artistic practice in Africa, the scope and the richness of that practice.
Africa is a melting pot of diversity. The terrain, the people, the beliefs, the culture and traditions, from the northern parts of Sub-Sahara all the way down south, the deserts to the rainforests, they all come together to form a giant cocktail of the African society. A radio show to discuss African continent would be a challenging, complex yet thrilling adventure to engage in. Such a program would be a great platform to showcase Africa, albeit in a restricted manner. Great in the sense that Africa historically had a vibrant oral culture that is still present to a great extent in different forms, and radio would be an ideal platform to celebrate and showcase this. My radio show would aspire to breathe new life into the oral nature of the African culture, the history and heritage, transcending various historical periods. Of importance would be to present the pre-colonial African civilization and philosophy, espousing aspects such as the Ubuntu philosophy, which transcend most, if not all, of the African communities, as well as aspects of the societal and political organizations of the people. I would encourage discourse that celebrates the differences, inherent and otherwise, among the diverse groups across Africa, and the relationship between Africa and other parts of the world. The show would celebrate great African leaders in social, political, and economic spheres, with an underlying aim of knitting the beads of the true African spirit that is at the heart of all their different, elaborate, and distinguished stories. Like it is for a great cake, music and performance would be the cherry on top. I would weave African music from across the continent and integrate it into the show, not just to create the African mood with the beats, rhythm, and instruments, but also as a tool to educate. The show would not be complete without a segment on contemporary Africa, with candid discussions ranging from popular culture to aspects of identity, as well as innovation and creativity in dealing with modern-day problems facing Africa.
If I'm to feature any African content in a radio station, I would feature a content that has to do with a family life. I would start from dating, courtship, marriage, naming ceremony, burial rites, how it's done in a community, a tradition, and in some families. After each discussion, let's say about marriage, I would give room for questions and answers, and after everything said, I will close the program or the discussion with a song of marriage or songs meant for new brides. Then if it's a naming ceremony, I'll still do the same, give room for questions and answers, and then I'll close the discussion with lullabies for children during naming ceremonies. All these are done to enlighten people about different culture, different family life, different traditions.
Ko shakka babu, rediyo na ɗaya daga cikin hanyoyin zamani na isar da saƙo zuwa dubbai ko miliyoyin masu saurare. Kuma dabarar isar da saƙo kai tsaye na abubuwa da suka shafi wannan nahiyar Afirka za ya taimaka wajen ƙara wayar da kawunan mutane waɗanda ke wasu ɓangarorin duniya akan sassan rayuwa daban-daban na mutane a nahiyar Afirka. Idan na samu damar gabatar da wasu shirye-shirye akan nahiyar Afirka a cikin ƙasar Jamus, lallai zan so in gabatar da abubuwa guda biyu kacal. Na farko, zan so in canza yadda mutane ke tunani akan nahiyar Afirka. Abin damuwa ne sosai a ce har yanzu akwai masu tunanin yunwa, cututtuka da rashin ci gaba da rashin wayewa a cikin mutanen Afirka. Wannan tunani ba daidai yake ba, kuma dai ba gaskiya ba ne. Yana da asali daga rubuce-rubucen Turawa da suka fara ziyarar Afirka saboda ba su fahimci rayuwar mutanen ba a lokacin. Abu na biyu yana da alaƙa da na ɗaya. Zan yi ƙoƙarin samar da shirye-shirye kamar kala uku a cikin waɗannan sa'o'i guda biyu. Zan gabatar da ingantaccen tarihin mutane da nahiyar Afirka. Wannan zai baiwa masu saurare damar sauraren Afirka daga mutumin Afirka, wato abin da Hausawa ke kira waƙa daga bakin mai ita. Sai abu na biyu shine gabatar da fasahohin zamani na Afirka, tun daga ƙera tukane zuwa rini zuwa siffofin halittu da dai sauransu. Wannan zai sanya masu sauraro su amfana da wannan hikimar da Allah ya yi wa mutanen Afirka tun asali. Sai abu na uku kuma na ƙarshe, wato gabatar da labarai, tatsuniyoyi da kacici-kacici da sauran makamantansu, tare da baiwa masu saurari damar kira kai tsaye domin su shiga cikin shirin. Ina da yaƙinin cewar wannan hanya ce da Jamusawa za su amfana da irin hikimomin mutanen Afirka ko da ba su samu damar zuwa Afirka ba.
I would certainly strive to make good use of an opportunity to create a 2-hour weekly program that features exclusively African content in a radio station in Germany. My main focus will be on showcasing African people, their language and culture through music, although I will attempt to reflect African language and culture in other forms. There are several interesting things to portray about Africa to a predominantly German audience. I will design programs to showcase the uniqueness of the diverse ethnic nationalities, bearing in mind that the absence of visuals which characterize radio programs may present some form of limitation to an audience that prefer more of visuals. I will present contents that appeal to the imagination and emotions of the people. I will create contents in newsreels, documentaries, and performing arts, especially music and drama. The art form will not just reflect the oral histories of the people, but the attention will also be paid on reflecting the everyday lives of contemporary African people. The programs will be designed to accommodate varieties each week. I will present the diverse kinds of music in Africa. Music is the heartbeat of African people. Music in Africa is not just for entertainment. It is part of the lives of the people. Music connects the diverse aspects of people in Africa, both at the traditional and modern setting. The different kinds of music in Africa, which include high life, jazz, juju, Afrobeat, hip hop, reggae, tell stories of the oral histories and present life of Africans. It highlights life's major milestones. It explores spiritual experiences. It promotes traditional values. It also reflects modern values. It reflects the struggles of the people, the victories of the people, their joys and their sorrows. Even if the 2 hours are devoted to African music, the audience will certainly get enough about Africa. However, I will try as much as possible to present other forms of performing arts if given 2 hours every week to feature programs exclusively with African content.
Those were all our contributions this month. You can see an emphasis not just on music, but on traditional and oral cultures among the answers. Do you agree with these emphases? What kind of custom radio program about Africa would you make if you had the power? Tell us in the comments below. Thanks so much for tuning in to Afrikanists Assemble this month. Speaking of African radio, did you know that we feature a different independent African music artist every episode? Feel free to go check out our past episodes to hear them all, and while you're at it, make sure you subscribe to catch all our future episodes. See you next month.